Good morning. Today's General Club is Hematological Characteristics and Risk Factors in the Classification and Prognosis Evaluation of COVID-19. It's a retrospective cohort study. My moderator is Dr. Samagasep. Introduction. According to the Diagnosis and Treatment Protocol for Novel Coronavirus Pneumonia published by National Health Commission of China, there are 4 severity levels of COVID-19 based on the clinical manifestations, which are mild, moderate, severe, and critical disease. Criteria used for these classifications are respiratory factors such as respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, and lesion progression in the pulmonary imaging. Severe, especially critical cases, are usually complicated by other organ dysfunctions, including septic shock, heart failure, and disseminated intravascular coagulation. Venous thromboembolism is common in patients with the severe disease, and coagulopathy is also common in patients with the critical and fatal disease. So the definitions which we need to know according to this study are patients meeting any of the following criteria are classified as patients having critical disease, that is respiratory failure requiring mechanical ventilation, patient in shock or other organ failure that requires monitoring and treatment in an intensive care unit. Severe cases were defined as a respiratory distress greater than 30 breaths per minute, saturation of 93% or less at rest, and PaO2 by FiO2 of 40 kPa or less, or more than 50% lesion progression over 24 to 48 hours in pulmonary imaging. And moderate diseases was defined as fever and respiratory symptoms with radiological findings of pneumonia but without the severe or critical features. Patients with mild disease are defined as patients with mild clinical symptoms and no sign of pneumonia on imaging, who did not require any hospital admissions, so were not included in this study. Methods used in this study design is a retrospective cohort study. These study included patients from 3 designated sites: main campus, west campus, and cancer center at the Wuhan Union Hospital. Patients diagnosed with COVID-19 according to WHO interim guidance with positive SARS-CoV-2 RNA detection in throat swab specimens, and moderate or worse diseases were eligible, and exclusion criteria were missing hematological or coagulation data, transfer of the patients to other medical facilities with unknown outcomes, and age younger than 18 years. The study was approved by the Research Ethics Commission of Wuhan Union Hospital, and the requirement for informed consent was waived by Ethics Commission. What are the various procedures? The demographic, clinical, laboratory, treatment, and outcome data were extracted from electronic media medical records, and laboratory tests were done at admission and then with some regularity according to the patient condition during the hospital stay. It was repeated every day or every 3 days, and blood examinations involving measuring complete blood count, coagulation profile, biochemical tests, cytokines, and serum ferritin. Particularly coagulation tests including prothrombin time, APTT, antithrombin 3 activity, fibrinogen, fibrin degradation products, and D-dimer were detected using a SEAR evaluation coagulation analyzer and original reagents at Wuhan Union Hospital with standard procedures. And patients were screened by 2 scoring system: sepsis-induced coagulation, which detects earlier phase of DIC to facilitate early recognition and anticoagulation treatment in clinical practice, and International Society of Thrombosis and Hemostasis for over DIC. Critical ill patients were assessed for SIC, which is greater than or equal to 4 points, and ISTH over DIC, that is greater than 5 points retrospectively. Treatment of patients with low molecular weight heparin was recorded. Prophylactic anticoagulation treatment was not regularly given to patients with worse disease. Discharged patients were followed up by telephone and appointments once every 2 weeks. Analysis continuous variables were expressed as mean and standard deviation, or median and IQR. And for data with non-normal distribution, Kruskal-Wallis test was used. The independent group t-test was used to analyze normally distributed continuous variables, and the Mann-Whitney U test was used to analyze non-normally distributed continuous variables. Categorical variables was presented as frequency rates and percentages and analyzed using chi-square test or Fisher's exact test as appropriate, and multiple comparisons among groups using Bonferroni adjustment method was done. To obtain a more accurate model, it included significant variables with an area under curve greater than 0.6 in the multivariate logistic regression model using a stepwise selection procedure. This multivariable logistic regression model was fit to estimate the effect of indicators or inpatient mortality for severe and critical patients. Compare data from repeated measures using the linear mixed model. Groups and time points were fixed effects and individuals were random effects. A two-sided p-value of 0.05 or less was considered statistically significant. They did statistical analysis using SPSS software. Funder of the study had no role in study design or data collection, data analysis, or data interpretation or writing of the report. And YH and HM had full access to all the data in the study and final responsibility for the decision to submit for publication. Results between January 23rd and February 23rd, 466 patients were admitted to Wuhan. 86 patients were excluded from this study because they did not have any hematological and coagulation data, and some were transferred to other medical facilities with unknown outcomes, or they were less than 18 years. Data from 380 patients admitted to the hospital with confirmed COVID-19 were analyzed in the study. Patients with severe and critical disease were older than the moderate disease, and the men had more severe disease than the women. 48% of patients had comorbidities, and hypertension is the most common, followed by diabetes, coronary heart disease, and carcinoma. And of the 86 patients with critical disease, 22% patients received high flow nasal cannula oxygen therapy, and 36% received non-invasive mechanical ventilation, and 55% received invasive mechanical ventilation. This is the same table representing the comorbidities and sex variabilities in the presentation of the COVID disease. 37% patients received vasopressors, and 6% patients received kidney replacement therapy. And of the hematological and coagulation parameters, neutrophil count, lymphocyte count, neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, prothrombin time, D-dimer, fibrin degradation products, C-reactive protein and LDH, white blood cell count, IL-10 and serum ferritin were significantly different across all the comparisons. Counts of eosinophils and platelets were significantly lower in patients with critical disease than those with severe disease. And thrombocytopenia was recorded in 49% with critical disease, which is significantly higher frequency than the patients with the severe and moderate diseases. Prothrombin time, D-dimer, and fibrin degradation products were significantly higher in patients who were critically ill than in those with moderate and severe disease. Proportion of patients with prolonged HPTT was about 11%, and in moderate disease it is 38%. Fibrinogen concentration was significantly lower in patients with critical disease than those with severe disease. 20% of patients with critical disease had low fibrinogen. However, only 1% of patients with moderate disease and none with the severe disease had low fibrinogen. Incidence of low antithrombin 3 activity was higher in patients with severe and critical disease than in those with moderate disease, but similar between patients and with severe and critical disease. This is the table representing all the biochemical variations between different groups of the diseases of COVID-19. 55 in-hospital deaths occurred, among which 96 patients were with critical disease. ARDS and septic shock was the most common, and thrombotic and hemorrhagic events including DIC, thromboembolism, GI bleeding, acute MI, hematuria, and acute cerebral infarction are also seen. Out of the 55 patients who died, 40 were men and 15 were women. Concentration of CRP, IL-6, IL-10, serum ferritin, and LDH differed among survivors and the non-survivors, similar to previous reports. Although the non-survivors had higher median IL-6, the incidence of increased IL-6 did not differ between the two groups of survivors versus non-survivors. Proportion of patients with leukocytosis, lymphopenia, thrombocytopenia, and anemia, and values for neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, APTT, prothrombin time, fibrinogen, and D-dimer were significantly different between survivors and non-survivors. Increased neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, increased D-dimer, thrombocytopenia, prolonged prothrombin time were associated with increased risk of death. 8 non-survivors and 12 survivors had the dynamically monitored clinical and laboratory results needed for assessing SIC and ODIC over the time period of low molecular weight heparin once daily administration, which is the most common used. Despite varied course of disease, onset of SIC typically preceded that over DIC. This is the pictorial representation of the same. Discussion: thrombotic and hemorrhagic events were common complications in non-survivors. An outcome of death was associated with thrombocytopenia, increased neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, prolonged prothrombin time, and increased D-dimer. SIC and over DIC scores are also increased over time in non-survivors. Incidence of thrombocytopenia on admission was lower in patients with COVID-19 than in severe acute respiratory syndrome and Middle East respiratory syndrome, but it decreased with disease severity. Decreased platelet count reflecting their consumption and thrombin generation is helpful in patients recognizing severity of coagulopathy. Thrombocytopenia, which is common in viral infections, can be explained by immunological platelet destruction, inappropriate platelet activation and consumption, and impaired megakaryoparesis. One possible reason might be the different types and concentration of cytokines resulting in different degrees of coagulation disorders. Although patients infected with MERS-CoV were reported to have increased interferon gamma, TNF alpha, IL-15, and IL-17, patients with severe COVID-19 have increased IL-1 beta, IL-6, IL-2, IL-2R, IL-7, IL-10, and TNF alpha. So, as the knowledge of COVID-19 expands, inflammatory factors and lymphocyte function tests have been suggested for assessing severity of the disease. Results showed that high neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, which might be a result of excessive inflammation and immune suppression in sepsis triggered by SARS-CoV-2 infection, can be useful for predicting severity and mortality. In sepsis, neutrophils are hyperactivated with delayed apoptosis disorder along with depletion and exhaustion of CD4 and CD8 T cells as a result of apoptosis, which are common events in severe COVID-19. Partly due to T cell apoptosis, lymphocytopenia is also common in SARS-CoV virus and MERS-CoV virus infection. Compared with less easily accessible tests, neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio appears to be an efficient and practical indicator for the risk of COVID-19 mortality. A large epidemiological study reported that 50% of patients with COVID-19 have increased D-dimer during disease progression, and this proportion was as high as nearly 100 patients who died, which is consistent with the findings here. Furthermore, non-survivors had progressively increasing D-dimer and fibrin degradation products, which reflects resolution of thrombi in accordance with previous studies. The observation that fibrinogen gradually decreased over time in non-survivors but substantially increased during the early stages of COVID-19 might be explained by it being an acute reactive protein that is continuously consumed during disease progression. They found that prothrombin time and APTT were in normal range in most patients at admission, perhaps because hypercoagulability occurs at the early stages of COVID-19, but long-lasting consumption of clotting factors might be the reason that prothrombin time progressively increased in non-survivors at the late stage of the disease. Although the combination of thrombocytopenia, increased D-dimer, and prolonged prothrombin time is suggestive of DIC, previous studies have shown the incidence of DIC in overall and severe COVID-19 groups is much lower than in patients with septic shock. Incidence of DIC in non-survivors in a previous study was much higher than in this study. Compared with patients with non-COVID-19 ARDS, those with COVID-19 ARDS had significantly higher prothrombin time, antithrombin, fibrinogen, and platelets, but lower APTT and D-dimer. Patients with COVID-19 and acute respiratory failure presented with a severe hypercoagulability rather than hypocoagulability. This finding suggests that pattern of coagulation difference between the patients with severe COVID-19 and those with other severe diseases. Given that DSC screening by itself might improve outcomes in patients with sepsis, coagulation parameters are important for identification and intervention of coagulopathy as early as possible. 8 non-survivors with coagulopathy had progression from SIC to ISTH over DIC. Because of this retrospective nature of the study, little information about the use of low molecular weight heparin in the cohort, partly because of inadequate awareness of routine thromboprophylaxis at the early stages of pandemic. And when and how to use such treatment was decided by treating doctors in different designated hospitals. In non-COVID-19 patients with sepsis and coagulopathy or DIC, large-scale randomized controlled trials reported that anticoagulant therapy resulted in a great reduction in mortality among patients with sepsis and coagulopathy or DIC. But those with advanced coagulopathy might have disease progression that is no longer amenable to benefit from anticoagulant therapy. Treatment with anticoagulants may postpone or even reverse the harmful procoagulant pattern. Tang and colleagues confirmed that the timely application of low molecular weight heparin when patients met SICK criteria appeared to improve 28-day mortality. Other colleagues find out that patients with COVID-19 on low molecular weight heparin prophylaxis rarely developed over DIC. So studies are needed to show whether early administration of anticoagulants can improve survival in patients with COVID-19. Consistent with results, accumulating evidence has shown that patients with severe and critical COVID-19 have a risk of thrombosis even though low molecular weight heparin was used. Showed that thrombotic events in patients with COVID-19 ARDS were significantly higher than in non-COVID. Some Zhang and colleagues reported that the incidence of DVT was patient receiving venous thromboembolism prophylaxis, whereas it was 63% in patients not receiving prophylaxis. Possible mechanism is because maybe firstly refractory hypoxemia in patients with severe COVID-19 may induce vasoconstriction resulting in reduced blood flow promoting vascular occlusion. Secondly, because of excessive endothelial destruction accompanied by diabetes, older age, and inevitable prolonged bed rest, patients with severe and critical COVID-19 are more susceptible for thrombotic events. Thirdly, the fibrinolytic system might be further inhibited by COVID-19, making it more difficult to dissolve a thrombus because patients with SARS have higher plasma plasminogen activator inhibitor 1 than both healthy controls and patients with other types of pneumonia. Thromboprophylaxis might decrease the incidence of thrombosis. Young and colleagues showed that thromboprophylaxis had half the incidence of TBT in patients with COVID-19 on basis of a multi-center prospective cohort study. Helms and colleagues suggest stronger anticoagulation strategies for critically ill patients with COVID-19 than for critically ill patients without COVID-19. Therefore, anticoagulation therapy should be considered for critical patients with COVID-19. Theoretically, the application of heparin sodium or low molecular weight heparin inhibits blood coagulation, reduces inflammation, and inhibits platelet aggregation, preventing thrombosis and delaying coagulopathy progression to DIC in high-risk patients. However, timing, type, and dose of preventive anticoagulation therapy remains unclear and needs verification from high-quality randomized controlled trials. Limitations of the study some people were excluded because of incomplete documentation. All critical patients should have been evaluated for the dynamic profiles of the laboratory findings. Only 8 non-survivors and 12 survivors had the data needed for assessing SIC and over DIC, such as platelet counts, coagulation parameters, biochemical indicators, and sequential organ failure assessment scores during hospital admission. In addition, low molecular weight heparin was not given in a consistent way during the study period, so analysis might be inaccurate. Further studies are needed to investigate the association between the early introduction of low molecular weight heparin and outcomes of patients with critical disease. In conclusion, coagulopathy is not a non-negligible complication and potentially important cause of death in patients with critical COVID. Dynamically monitoring hematological and coagulation parameters such as neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, platelet count, D-dimer, post-treatment time might provide a reliable and convenient method for classifying and predicting the severity and outcomes of patients with COVID-19. The SIC scoring system might be a useful tool for physicians to assess and manage critically ill patients. Implications: dynamically monitoring hematological and coagulation parameters such as neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, platelet count, D-dimer, and prothrombin time might provide a reliable and convenient method for classifying and predicting the severity and outcomes of patients with COVID-19, and regularly assessing and screening the conditions of thrombosis and early disseminated intravascular coagulation among patients with severe or critical disease is necessary. Prophylactic strategies, including anticoagulation therapy, might potentially prevent patient deterioration and improve survival. Thank you.